Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
You're breathing.
If this makes too much noise, I'll use. Why don't I use the other mic? I can't stand still long enough for that to work. How's this? Does that work?
That works.
Okay. All right. I was going to bring flowers today, but I couldn't find any brown ones. Socks, I didn't bring any today. So we're talking about gratitude and thankfulness, and you know, that made me think about what we do with it and what its purpose is in our lives. And you know, in the past, the purpose of thankfulness to God or to the gods was basically to appease them, because God was like the king. And you know, if you did something for someone else and they gave you something, you could say, well, that's just what was my due. They didn't really do anything for me, they owed me that. But if the king gave you something and you weren't thankful and didn't express how thankful you were, then the king might just decide to cut your head off instead. Because of all of the power and the ego part of being this great ruler. And people modeled their gods after their kings. And so when you got things, it was very important to thank God profusely so that God didn't get mad at you and come back and do something bad. And so there were elaborate rituals made to thank the gods. And of course those rituals developed more and more until you were not only saying thank you to the god, but you were making sacrifices and giving gods fruits and vegetables and meats, and pretty soon people, you know, oh, thank you, God. Here's this person I captured. Take them. And so thankfulness really didn't have anything to do with your feelings. It had to do with making sure you kept getting things and you were safe. And it's not always different nowadays in the way we do it. And I was thinking about that and what we can be, and I'm not saying we particularly, but people in general, you know, what we can be thankful for. And, you know, I was looking at, we can be thankful for our wealth. And you get a new job, you know, and it's paying very well, and you're really thankful for that. And then we work with people who are homeless, so that getting a half a sandwich that you found in the dumpster is what you got for that day. And I say, well, as a minister, it's hard to tell them to be thankful for that. And we can be thankful for our accomplishments. I'm very blessed. I was just elected to chair of the California Foundation for Independent Living Centers and re-elected to chair of the California State Rehabilitation Center, and I get to meet all these people and do all of these things. And yet I work with people, some of whom are in nursing homes and have no opportunities to do things, to accomplish anything. And as a minister, what do I tell them to be thankful for? And we say, well, we've got our health. You know, I jog as much as I can and lift some weights, and things hurt. If you see me stand up, I'm grimacing, but I've got my health. I was at our state, the board meeting of our State Association of Independent Living Centers, and one of the executives is legally blind and another's totally blind, and two of them are in wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs, with very limited use of their hands. One of the staff people came in, ran their wheelchair with their chin. One of the executive directors has a degenerative disease that she will eventually most likely die from within the next few years. And so do I tell them to be thankful for their health so they can get more of this? You know, it's not as easy as thing to think of until you really get into it and think it through. And to me, thankfulness has two purposes within our lives. And one is that purpose that we are in a physical world. For whatever reason, who knows, that as eternal spiritual beings, we're in this physical world. And thankfulness is a technique within this physical world. Not necessarily being thankful for what we've got, but being thankful for that opportunity to get things. And there's an amazing story with my sister. And her nephew has leukemia, and I want to thank Angie and others who are doing treatments for him. But a side effect of that is lack of money, because he had to quit his job, his wife had to leave her job. My sister and her husband are retired with very little income, and there's a lot of expenses. Even though they do have insurances covering it, there's a lot of expenses, and they live in Tucson, and the best treatment's in Phoenix, so they're going up there. And, you know, some of us have helped her some, and my sister said, you know, we have these friends and stuff who have money, and I'm going to just be thankful that they may give us some money. And then she thought, well, you know, that's not really it. I'm just going to be thankful that this money comes into us that we need. And then they got a letter in the mail. Her husband got it, and he just about threw it away because it was one of those letters with the typed-in name, you know, Barbara Horton, and the address, and he figured it was an ad. So he started to toss it. And they said, oh, well, we'll open it up. And there were 2 checks from American Express. One for $500 and one for $100. Oh. And they were not signed. And her husband said, oh, that's some sort of scam, you know. That's something where you can't cash it, or if you can, then they tell you you've taken a loan from somebody and you're going to have to pay them back all this interest. And he said, well, I don't know. So she took him to the bank, and the bank called American Express, and they said, no, those are 2 good checks. They've been paid for. They're perfectly good. She has no clue where they came from, wow. But that money came in the mail for her. Wow. Of course, I confessed. I gave it to her. And all she did was open up to being thankful for money coming in. And thankfulness in that way is a tool for us to live in this physical world. But let's look at it deeper. What does thankful mean? What does thanks mean? Well, thanks comes from an Old English word, pankian, which comes from a Proto-Germanic word, meaning the language from which English and German came from, Fakojong. And what it means is it's a root word meaning good thought. And so when you give thanks, you are giving a good thought, which creates light as well. And so, as new thought, I mean, how perfect can that be? That when we give thanks, we are giving a good thought into the universe. And so, when you're thankful, the highest way spiritually to be thankful is to be thankful for nothing, or to be thankful for everything. And it's not the card you get, it's not the words you say, it's not those formal rituals that we do to express thanks. It's that inner beingness, that good thought that's in there. Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you ever say is thank you, that will suffice. That just being thankful, just innerly saying thank you, is all we really need to do to express to the universe. And now, why does that happen with us? And I was thinking about that. And of course, what this does is when we are truly thankful, it changes our state of being. It changes our consciousness. And if we're thankful for all things, then we're associating with all things. We are recognizing our connection with all things. And so being thankful is this tool for the physical world, but it's much more than that. Being thankful is the way that we can change our consciousness to actually feel inwardly this connection we have with all of life. And in fact, it's that connection that brings us happiness. One old saying is, happiness doesn't generate gratefulness. Gratefulness brings us happiness. Because gratefulness, saying thank you, is what changes that frame of mind for us. And so, you know, it's wonderful in life to go after what we want. And I'm all for that. We should be passionate about it. And you'll hear me say up here, when you want things, do treatments, but do something. I mean, I think we're going to be a lot more successful if we physically go out and do things to make them happen, the things we want. And it's great to want things and to go after it and to accomplish things and to give back. But it's also very, very important to keep that little kernel of truth that we have. That kernel of truth that says, yes, here we are in this mortal life, in this physical existence, in this place where we fall down and hurt ourselves, some of us when we're not careful, Steve. Where people say insulting things, where one day we're really high and the next day we're low. That's all part of it. That's okay. And thankfulness is a tool to help us through that. But keep that kernel of truth and go back to it every day. Make sure that within your life you set aside at least a minute or two every day to go back and remember who you are, because that's what thankfulness is. True inner thankfulness is a remembering of our divine nature, our divine connection with all things. And it's letting us open up to that, open ourselves completely, and express that gratitude, that happiness, that thankfulness to the universe, and say, thank you for us all, thank you for all, both the divine and the material, and with that we accept it and we rejoice. And with that, thank you for having me.
Good talk.